Keep in mind, a lot of these families are the timeline of the neighborhood. They saw the changes throughout time.
My grandmother, I mean, she was, you know, she raised 8 kids, and from the 8, all of them were male except for 2. She had 2 daughters, and so she knew how to raise, you know, a family.
There was 6 boys and 1 girl, and my mom and my dad, and then of course my dad, unfortunately, we got divorced, and so we wound up growing up by ourselves, and that was kind of hard. It was kind of hard.
My grandma had sisters, I think, 7 sisters or 6 sisters and 1 brother, and like 4 or 5 of them lived there when I was young, as I was growing up. Learned a lot from them in terms of being respectful, being spiritual, religious values about helping others, being good to your neighbor. I mean, it was like one big family almost.
One of the memories that comes to my mind often is, you know, the love that I had from, you know, my uncles and especially my mom, and then I had another mom, and my birth mom, and you know, so I was lucky.
My mom's also from this barrio. She used to feed all the little other kids around here. My mom's name is Leslie Romero. Everybody around here knew her as La Puppet. Very well loved and respected lady around here, especially from kids around my age, younger. A lot of poor kids walking around here, no food, so my mom make enough food for us and any other kids walking by that needed food for them. So my mom would feed them.
I mean, there was always something to eat at my Nana's house when we were growing up. And then during Christmas, because there was so many of the sisters, it'd be kind of fun, not, well, it was funny because all the sisters would go to my Nana's house, and you'd see all these elderly women and all this white hair. And they're usually pretty small, they were kind of petite. And so when they made tamales for Christmas, they'd have a whole assembly line. And then my tia Josefa, who's featured on the mural, Making Tortillas, that's my tia, my great aunt, not my Nana. She lived in Caborca, so she would get here a few days before Christmas, and so my Nana would be all, ya va venir la Josefa, you know, ya va venir la Josefa. And so when she would get there, she'd call my dad, ya llegó la Josefa. And so sure enough, for the holidays, they make all these tamales, and they were good tamales. And then they played cards. And I should have brought, I have more stuff, visuals. They did a story on them. The Arizona Daily Star did a story on them where they showed my Nana at church and my tia Josefa at church, and I think my Nana's going like this to my tia. And then they have my tia making tortillas, and they're playing cards, and just being who they were. And my Nana lived to be like 103, I think. My tia was a little hard of hearing, but she lived to be maybe 101, if I'm not mistaken. But the thing about them, all my tias, they were great role models. They didn't have to tell you anything about what to do or say. You just looked at them. They were positive role models just by being who they were. And if you caught it, if you were smart, you were watching them, going, damn. Very good people, people of light, people of love.
My grandfather came from Colima, coming north, and they settled in Tucson, there in that property.
So my grandfather, Don Chico Cruz, came here from Mexico, and came here from Mexico, and he married my grandmother, who was like at least 25 years younger, and just started building the first original house, which is not the house that I'm in right now. This is the property, but it was a different house back then. For her, and my grandma already had children, so he started building a house that was big enough for her and her children. And it was, from what I hear, they say it's like a 13-bedroom house. They just kept adding to the house, and in the backyard, it's humongous, that there was even like another like kind of like little apartment shack place for even more family members to stay there.
My tata, I don't know, I'm not sure if he was a carpenter. That's a good question. I just know that he worked with his hands, and he had all these tools, and he did work with wood because he had saws back there, and then he had a drill, one of those drills that he had like a little pole and a drill. And I think he worked at some kind of store. But I think he was like a carpenter. He worked with his hands definitely, but I don't know specifically what he did.
And my grandmother, which was, I wear this symbol in my beret for my grandma. One is Fort Benning, Georgia, where I did the advanced combat training. And the other symbol is the eagle dancer, because my grandma says your guardian bird is the eagle. And my grandmother was with us, and she had a lot of the Mayan tradition. They kicked her out of church, by the way, because she made this swing.
Oh, really?
It's something that you make and you bury in the ground, and it's permanent. Because they wanted to invite her to bring punch for the church. Well, we buried the tesween, and everybody, and she made the punch, of course, but it had a kick to it. And everybody was happy, but then later on everybody had a hangover, and all the ladies got mad and they kicked her out. And my grandma says, that's no good spirit there. The Creator made a spirit. It's not in the building. This came from the earth. My grandma was in the herbs and cutting herbs at the chudea, the nopal. All this meant something, that there's plenty of food in the desert. You just got to know where to find it. Yeah. And she would show me things. And I always liked to hang out with my grandma. Yeah. It was a small lady. She was a small, tiny lady. Mayan were small mix. Okay. And a lot of stories. And she also told me about the roadrunner. If something happens, the roadrunner's going to come and talk to you. Look behind you. The eagle's always watching you. It's over you. But the roadrunner is going to say if something happens. And sure enough, when there was something in my life happening, that somebody passed away or a conflict, there was a roadrunner on my doorstep singing and chatting away. Huh. So she was into those things that we take for granted. She was very much in touch with certain traditions. And I wish now that I would have even dug more into it and wrote a lot of these things.